One of the most common responses I kept getting whenever I told people I pre-ordered the new iPhones. I pre-ordered the new iPhones, by the way. I didn't make a video about it because, honestly, what is there to talk about? But yeah, I pre-ordered the Pro Max in silver and the iPhone 11 in red. I'll be getting them on launch day, just like everybody else. But anyway, the most common response was 64 gig. You got the 64 gig model? And I've constantly seen it across the internet. People very, very upset that these new iPhones have the 64 gigabyte standard configuration, which is funny given I can recall just a few years ago where that used to be like the maxed out version. And anyway, I can just tell that there's a ton of people very, very annoyed with the fact that iPhones ship with 64 gig standard, of course no expandable storage. I'm here to tell you what I do and how I don't run out of storage space on my iPhone, because I've been using the iPhone XS Max for the previous year, and this is 64 gigs, and I have never once got that annoying storage pop-up almost full. And also, most of my phone is still empty, and this doesn't come from just not using the phone very much. So there's a lot of details to get into. Let's begin. The first thing I want people to understand from the beginning of this video is that we all are different users, okay? A lot of us use our phones for different things. A lot of us use different apps that take up more space than others. So the reason I am able to use 64 gigs on my iPhone very likely won't work for you. This is not an objective argument that's going to apply to everyone, and I'm not here to convince you that no one should get the 256 gig or 512 gig. You know your use case better than anyone. I'm just here to explain to you why 64 gig works for me, but of course, that's not everyone. The main reason I don't buy higher storage configuration iPhones anymore is because I use iCloud storage. I know this may have not been a big surprise to everyone, but yeah, I pay for the maxed out plan, which provides you with 2 terabytes of cloud storage. And I know this sounds really, really expensive. 2 terabytes of cloud storage? That's gotta be insane. I know, it's actually $10 a month. Pretty insane, right? $9.99. Plus with the Apple Card, you get 3% of that back, but whatever. Ignore that part of it. Now, I understand people. Cloud storage is not the same as local storage, but let me at least make the argument as to why there's lots of people out there that it's in their best interest to go with cloud storage over internal storage. So for one, the price. If you consider the fact that upgrading from a 64 gig iPhone up to a 256 gig iPhone, in regards to the Pros at least, because those are the ones I use as my daily, that's a $150 upgrade. So $1,000 for the 64 gig iPhone Pro, and then to add less than 200 gigs to your phone, you have to spend an extra $150. Plus, there's a little bit more compounded on that, because you'll notice when you get charged for Apple's subscription services, there's no sales tax on that, or it is and it's just included, but it's a flat rate, $9.99. That's what they charge you. There's not some extra fee on top of that. However, when you're purchasing your new iPhone for the year, that extra $150 is going to increase your overall sales tax that you pay dependent on where you are in the world. But either way, typically there is some fees attached to when you purchase a new iPhone, so increasing the subtotal before you get to checkout does mean that it's probably a little bit more than $150 to upgrade the storage, and 64 compared to 256, it's not even 200 gig upgrade. Compared to the $10 a month I pay for 2 terabytes of iCloud storage, that costs me $120 a year. So pretty dang close. You know, the internal storage 256 gig iPhone does actually cost a little bit more than the iCloud storage, but I think there's also a lot of limitations to local storage. I'm not saying it's all bad. There's definitely benefits to buying the upgraded storage modules. What I'm just trying to do in today's video, guys, is let you know that there are benefits to going with cloud storage, and let me explain. So for one, the $10 a month 2 terabyte iCloud storage plan, for one, that's a whole lot more data. You pay $150 extra for that iPhone, you're not even getting an extra 200 gigs of storage. I pay less than that at $120 a year, and I'm getting 2 terabytes of cloud storage that also is not just accessible by one phone. You see, buying local storage is cool because you can access it when you're disconnected from Wi-Fi or maybe in a spot with really bad cellular service. However, it is strictly limited to whatever you put on that device. When you buy iCloud storage, you can back up lots of different devices to the same Apple ID account. So I'm actually the manager of an Apple ID family. Me, my wife, and even a few of my siblings are attached to my Apple ID family, and we can all do iCloud backups of our phones when we want to switch them out. So when I upgrade to the new iPhone next week, it's going to be a lot easier to restore from iCloud backup, because the actual storage that has to be loaded onto my individual phone is going to be a lot less than that that than those of you who like to buy the 256 gig iPhones or the 512 gigabyte iPhones and fill those things up with hundreds and hundreds of gigs of data. Restoring those backups is going to take a lot longer because there's a lot more data to download or transfer over from another phone. And like I said, that iCloud data is not just designated for this iPhone. My iPad Pro is also a 64 gig tablet, and once again, I've never had an issue with that storage filling up. It has never given me the pop-up because iOS actually does a really good job at backing things up in the background. Things like photos and camera, which are my main things. A lot of you may be thinking, well, Drew just doesn't use his phone very much. But I create a lot of storage. I record 4K at 60 videos for my vlogging channel on Telosa Talks, and those videos are a lot longer before they get all cut up and condensed down. So I would say I regularly record like 10-minute 4K at 60 videos every other day most of the time, sometimes more, factoring in all the screenshots of memes I send, plus all the pictures I take. I take a ton of photos throughout the year, so it's not like I have to be a low data user in order to comfortably use the 64 gig model. I don't have to worry about data at all. But keep in mind, guys, I still understand there's a lot of you that use different apps than I do. One thing I've particularly noticed is a lot of people overseas that use the WhatsApp. That app keeps all of your messages in your photos that you send each other or receive local to that app. So I've seen plenty of people that have the WhatsApp taking up 17, 20 gigs on each of their phones because WhatsApp stores all that locally. The nice thing about iMessage, and I know it's not popular overseas, but the thing I personally enjoy about iMessage is that in the background, it will start backing up older messages that you're not looking at so often to the cloud and not store them on the device. That way, iMessage doesn't take up as much space. iOS also has built-in options for you to offload apps that you don't use very much, so you still want them in your phone in certain folders, but if it detects that you're not opening them too much, it will just automatically back them up in the background. And I even have a lot of Apple Music downloaded to my phone as well, so it's not like I'm always streaming music. I typically download any album that I enjoy listening to, but I also think there's a lot of people out there that just like the idea of the music being stored on the phone because that's what they're used to. Maybe it's from the days when we all had iPods and we would love to have the music, downloaded to the device because as soon as you left home and you left the Wi-Fi network, now none of the music would work unless you actually downloaded it. But honestly, if you have a good cellular plan, it doesn't have to be a 5G one, even just a basic 4G plan, you can still do a lot of the streaming that you need to, and even iOS can back things up in the background without having to use too much data on your plan. I completely understand why this doesn't work for everyone, because in the past, at my childhood home, we didn't even have very good Wi-Fi. It got to the point where we just canceled our Wi-Fi plan altogether because our phone service was pretty good and we had unlimited data, so it made more sense for us to just hotspot all of our devices off our phones, which simply meant we didn't have the option to use Wi-Fi a lot of the time. So back then, in the early days of my iPhone usage, I would always get the maxed out storage option. My first iPhone 5, that had 64 gigs, which at the time was the most you could get. And then when the iPhone 6 Plus came out, I bought the 128 gig option. When the iPhone 7 Plus came out, I bought the 256 gig option. But it was after I moved out of my childhood home when I actually had sustainable Wi-Fi, and it doesn't need to be super fast. It's not like you need fiber optic uploads. I don't have that. My upload here is about 30, and I still never really noticed times where the phone is backing things up. And the only holdup with using cloud storage over local storage, as long as you have a decent cellular connection and a decent Wi-Fi connection, is maybe when you're scrolling back through like hundreds and hundreds of videos you've recorded and you find a video that's like 3 years old. When you hit play on that video, it has to buffer for like a brief second and then it starts playing. But honestly, I don't do that a lot. Most of the videos I'm watching on my phone that I've either screen recorded or just vlogged in my daily activity, it will keep those recent photos and videos on the phone until it knows that you haven't used them for a while. Completely understand why some of you don't want to go with the iCloud storage option, but I will say it's cheaper for me as someone who's buying a new iPhone every single year to review for this channel. I actually save a little bit of money just paying the 2 terabyte iCloud storage plan because it's cheaper to pay the $120 than it is the $150, and that extra $150 only gives me a little bit under 200 gigs extra, and it's only for that phone. The 2 terabytes of iCloud storage benefits all of my Apple products, not just my iPhone, my iPad, and also my wife's iPhone and her iPad, and my siblings' devices as well. They all get to back up their data to the iCloud plan when they need to, all for just $10 a month. And if you don't need the 2 terabytes just because maybe you're not interested in doing the Apple ID family sharing, you just want the extra 200 gigs to be available on your phone when it feels most convenient, well, there is also a 200 gigabyte iCloud storage plan that only costs $3 a month. I know some people hate services and they hate the subscription model thing, and you'd rather just have an upfront cost, even if it's more expensive, so I totally get that. But consider the fact that you're getting more storage, even if it's not local, you're still getting more more for $36 extra a year to just have that 200 gigabyte freedom, so that when there's things on your phone that you're not using all the time, or messages that have been sent a long time ago, Apple very quietly and very smartly just offloads all that data, puts it in the iCloud so that the phone can access it when it needs to, but they know on a day-to-day basis it's not really going to make a difference. And it definitely hasn't for me. I don't experience a lot of times where I'm scrolling and I have to wait for messages to download, or I have to wait for videos to download. It usually just takes a second, and it ends up being more affordable for me and extremely convenient, because as someone who switches iPhones a lot and gives my old iPhones away, or switches to a new iPhone to try out for a month and then switches back, having minimal local storage on those devices makes transferring all that data much easier. And I hope the takeaway from this video is not that Apple should offer 64 gig options. There's a lot of people out there that were saying all of the new iPhones should have 128 gig by default, and I want to be on the record and say I'd be completely fine with that. I would not be mad if they wanted to raise the storage options. I have nothing against putting more local storage on the phone. All I'm trying to say is with the iPhone Pro model specifically, if it was a debate between make 128 gig the default storage configuration and keep the prices the same as last year, I would honestly say just keep the prices the same as last year. Sure, it would have been really nice if they made all the Pros ship with 128 gig by default, but if that meant that the price had to go up a little bit, I think more people would have been annoyed by that, because there's a lot of people that just buy the 64 gig option and don't have any issue keeping all of their data on that. It depends on what kind of a user you are. I know there's a ton of you that want to download all your movies and keep all this stuff offline so that maybe when you leave the house or you go to a place with terrible internet, you can have all this stuff locally, and that's fine for you. That's why Apple has those upgraded storage options. But per that request of everyone saying 128 gig should be by default, keep in mind that with the iPhone 11, the more affordable one, to double your storage from 64 gig to 128, it only costs an extra $50. And that means that the iPhone 11 is the same price as last year's XR if you buy the 128 gig option, which if I wasn't a YouTuber and I didn't want to get the iPhone Pro and I was just getting the iPhone 11, then yeah, I would say just go ahead, spend the extra $50, double your storage, get 128 gig. But I just think it's funny that a lot of people say, how are they shipping at 64 gig by default? But consider they were able to lower the price with the iPhone 11 than what the XR was, add all the features they did, and now if you want 128 gigs on the iPhone 11, it's the same price as a 64 gig XR last year. So they kind of did double up on storage in a way. It's just for the people who didn't want the 128 gig, they provided them the option with 64, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there like me that are perfectly happy just spending the $10 a month to get 2 terabytes of cloud storage that I don't even have to manage. Apple does all the offloading and they don't notify me of any of it, and all it really requires is a decent internet connection, which a lot of people have. So you can really save money if you consider cloud storage as a viable option, but I'm sure there's a lot of you in situations where cloud storage just wouldn't work, or your Wi-Fi is too slow, or your cellular sucks. I completely get that. Not saying everyone needs to be on 64 gig, but what I find bizarre, especially in today's day and age, is when so many people see that someone bought a 64 gig iPhone and they just freak out and go, why? How could you do that? I need higher storage configurations, and that means everyone needs higher storage configurations. Therefore, because I have this specific use case, no one else can be different from me. Everyone has to do what I do. No, we don't. Some of us want to save money. Some of us don't use as much data as you do, and we don't mind keeping that up in the cloud because we don't need to access it that regularly. And an added bonus is if you keep all of that data and pictures and videos stored locally and something happens to your phone, whether you lose it, it gets stolen, or you destroy it and drop it in a river, all of those pictures and videos are now gone. If that happens to me with my iPhone, all of the pictures and videos will still be accessible through the cloud. So cheaper, allows me to save money every year, more convenient because it benefits all my devices, more storage overall. I understand that cloud storage is different than local, but if you want to just talk about gigabyte per dollar, the iCloud storage provides a way better bang for your buck, and 4, it's safer in the case of emergencies, losing the device getting destroyed. All those pictures and videos get to stay up on the cloud so you don't lose them. Plus, you get to save on sales tax on the device by keeping the starting price a lot lower. Those are my reasons for choosing the 64 gig iPhone. So many people were asking about it, so I was like, okay, this needs a video, and I hope it made a little bit of sense to you. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you guys in the next one.